Coming up here on Chicago Bears Now, Kliff Kingsbury speaks to the media, talks about the idea of being a head coach again. We're going to talk all things Kliff. Is he a viable candidate for the Chicago Bears? And guys, we are knocking on the doorstep. 23 subs away from 112,000 here on Bears Now. If you want to help us grow, if you want to help support this show, hit that subscribe button. We got Bears coverage, coaching search every single day. Let's lock in. Appreciate your support. All right, I'm Harrison Graham. Kliff Kingsbury talks, and you knew it was coming. A lot of articles this week. We'll get to ESPN's reporting. I know Diana Rossini talked on Hogan Johns and yada, yada, yada about Kliff being a head coach candidate. You knew he was going to get asked about it at his weekly presser as he was asked today. Not today. I'm filming this Thursday night. On Thursday, about potentially being a head coach again. I would encourage you guys to go watch the video, but here is what he said. Quote, yeah, at some point, and he was asked, will you interview for jobs this year? He said, I won't comment on that, but we'll see how everything plays out. I'm very happy in Washington. This has been an awesome place that has helped me rekindle my love for the sport, close quote. And if you watch his body language and kind of his hesitation, like, will you take interviews this year? It's like, yeah, he's going to take interviews this year. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to take a job. That doesn't mean he's going to get a job. That doesn't mean he's the front runner to get this job. In fact, I don't think he's the front runner to get this job. I think if the Bears could handpick someone, it would be Ben Johnson. But I do think Kliff has got that itch again. Now, I do also buy into the idea that he's happy in Washington. He's having a good time coaching Jaden Daniels, focusing on the offense. But you watch that clip, he wants to be a head coach again. Very few of these people don't have egos. And if you have an ego, you want a second crack at this thing. You really, really do. And I think if the right opportunity came for Kliff, he would certainly take advantage of it. He was also asked, what did he learn from his stint with the Arizona Cardinals? And I thought he gave a really good answer here. Quote, I didn't know what I didn't know coming from college. I don't think I set up a foundation the way I would do it now. The way I would do it after watching DQ, Dan Quinn, and how he set the foundation from day one. These are the standards. This is where we won't compromise. I definitely could have done a better job with that. When you don't lay it out like that, it gets hard to put it back and reset it. That's where Dan has done such a great job. This is what we're going to do from day one. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Guys bought in. He's led in an incredible way. And, I listened to that clip, and it's easy to just hear words and see words, but I kind of saw it, and I was like, this guy, it feels like if he got a second chance, doesn't mean it would work, but I think he's more mature this time, because when he got the opportunity the first time, he hadn't really earned it. He was failing at Texas Tech. He had Patrick Mahomes, and his best season was 7-6. Like, he failed upward. The Cardinals brought him in because they were like, he doesn't have to worry about recruiting in the NFL. He's an offensive guy. He could jumpstart this team. And that actually wasn't horrible in Arizona. They made the playoffs one year. They had a couple of 500 seasons, but his teams tailed off toward the end of the years. I will say this, and about 5-6 weeks ago, it felt like Kliff was cliffing again, where second half of the season offense sputters, and Jaden in Washington had about a 3 or 4 week stretch where they weren't playing great, but last 4 weeks, 32 plus points per game. Jaden has run away with the rookie of the year, all that stuff. They're a playoff team, and Kliff's play calling and adjustments, I think, have been a big reason why. What is interesting, though? You know who is having the second half struggle again? Kyler Murray, Kliff Kingsbury's old quarterback. So that's not just a Kliff thing. That's a Kyler thing. So here's a take that I'm formulating here. Maybe Kyler was a bit of a problem. Maybe Kyler Murray is a super talented guy, but didn't put in all the work. Like, you remember the contract details that came out, like, oh, you have to watch X amount of hours of film per week. Oh, you can't play this amount of video games, all that stuff. Remember when all that leaked? like maybe there were some maturation issues there. Now, I think also with Kliff, and he basically acknowledged it in his in that quote there that yeah, like I would do things differently if I was a head coach. Being under Dan Quinn, I've learned some things because Kliff Kingsbury bounced around the league as a practice squad type of player, but he hadn't been in different NFL organizations. He hadn't seen how other guys had done it in coaching rooms. And so I'm kind of saying all this, and I was out on Kliff when they started to struggle 5, 6 weeks ago. Now they're playing well again. He's kind of growing on me. Like I listened to him there, and I'm like, I think he's maturing. I think he's learning. I think this year in Washington, he's really kind of grown up in some areas. Now, again, am I going to sit here and say Kliff's my top guy all of a sudden? No. Like Ben Johnson's my top guy. If you can get Ben Johnson, you get Ben Johnson. Unless in the interview he just is just a disaster. Like Ben Johnson, he's qualified. He's been calling plays for 3 years now. That offense has continued to grow. Like that is who I would get. But I think Kliff has gone from he's not even in the stratosphere for me to like, okay, like, well, if Ben says no, like he could be in that next tier of candidates. I would probably have Vrabel too, but what if Vrabel looks at this Kevin Warren, Ryan Poles and is like, I'm not doing that. Well, you got to hire somebody. Like, I think we all need to prepare. And, I see people on Twitter and they get after me when I talk about any other candidate than Ben Johnson or Vrabel. It's like, Ben Johnson or bust. And if you can't get him, it's Mike Vrabel. It's like, what if you don't get those guys? What if Vrabel's like, this setup sucks, I'm not doing it? What if Ben Johnson's like, I'm going to Jacksonville? We can't just assume that these guys are going to come here. So I just think we need to vet these candidates and listen to these reportings, ESPN, The Athletic, all these people. Kliff's probably going to interview. So I just think we need to be prepared for these scenarios and talk about these candidates. Now, we don't have to like be fake in how we feel about candidates, but things can change. I've been impressed with Kliff the last 4 or 5 weeks with how Jaden's bounced back and how the offense has bounced back. I thought against Atlanta, he went into the locker room at halftime, found some great halftime adjustments, and they came out firing in the second half. So those things impressed me. Can he be a head coach, lead the whole team, and still be the play caller and be a high-level leader, which you have to be as a head coach? I don't know. Those are fair questions. But listening to him today, talking about what he's learned from Dan Quinn, who is a high-level leader like that, I think that means something. I really do. Shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's show. Daily fantasy made easy at prizepicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS to get a $50 bonus when you play for just $5. Lineups of 2 or more players, regardless of sport, football, basketball, hockey players, soccer players can all be in your lineups, and you just choose more or less based on the stat projections available. Points, rebounds, assists, and basketball. You got yards, rushing, passing, receiving, touchdowns in football, goals in hockey, all kinds of different stats, fantasy score, you name it. Prize Picks has it available. You pick more, you pick less, and you set your lineups. You can win up to 1,000 times your entry on certain lineups with Prize Picks right now. Go check it out today, prizepicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS to get started with Prize Picks today. Now, I do think before we get to the latest ESPN report, we should talk about what Caleb Williams said during his press conference on Wednesday. Here is what he had to say. We talked about this on an episode yesterday here on Bears Now, or on Wednesday afternoon. He was asked about Kliff Kingsbury. It's not like I saw some bullshit aggregator say Caleb Williams is I can't remember the word they used. Basically, strongly advocating, like making the pitch for Kliff. It's like he was asked about Kliff. Is he supposed to not answer the question? He said, quote, "I know what type of guy he is. I know he loves football. I know he wants to win. He's a competitor. And so in many different aspects that I was just speaking of, I've been around him. So I would say that being around him, knowing him, asking him questions, things like that, I think obviously if he was here, I'd probably have more to say. But I think he fits a bunch of those qualities that I previously said. So, Caleb's like, yeah, I've been around him, like what he's about. I do think we've overvalued some of the connection with Kliff and Caleb. Most of that season, Kliff, he was like a senior analyst. It basically wasn't allowed to have hands-on coaching during the week. Later in the season, they promoted him, so he got a little more involved. But one thing I would say is there'd be less learning curve. like Caleb would probably be pretty familiar with a lot of the terminology. Now, Kliff adds a lot of wrinkles to his playbooks, especially with the different quarterbacks. Like he's run some different flavor looks with Jaden in that offense that I've never seen him run before. So it's not like he has a playbook and doesn't adjust it. But I do think there would be some clear familiarity on both sides. Like Kliff would know what Caleb is really good at and try to build upon that. And Caleb would know a lot of the concepts that Kliff likes to run. So there would be a short-term advantage in the sense of like, it's not like he would have to completely be learning a brand new scheme and offense. Like he would be familiar with what Kliff would be bringing to the table. Now, there was an ESPN report, Dan Graziano, reporting that people in NFL circles have, quote, speculated about Kingsbury and the Bears due to the Caleb connection and to the idea of kind of combining offensive guy with prior head coaching experience. So you've got that going on as well. So that's certainly notable. In addition to Graziano, Jeremy Fowler also added this when it comes to Caleb Williams. Quote, I expect Kingsbury to interview there. As was told to me, most or all names that have been linked to the Bears are people Chicago would like to interview. Observers believe experience will be a key factor in the hiring process, and Kingsbury has experience coupled with QB cachet. Now we've heard the buzzword selective with Ben Johnson's approach to the cycle. Kingsbury will also be selective, I'm told, as he's still getting head coach money from Arizona and gets to coach Daniels on a Washington team that should be even better next season. And I found that pretty interesting because, obviously we've heard it. It's been reported. I think it's pretty obvious from Ben Johnson's camp that they're not just going to take some job. And this year it's even being reported he's not even going to interview with teams if he doesn't feel strongly that the team he's interviewing with, he could see himself coaching with. So that is a good sign for the Bears because it sounds like he's going to take an interview with Chicago in terms of Ben Johnson, which means at minimum he's very interested. But I'm not surprised to see that Kliff could be selective too, not because he has the leverage Ben Johnson does, but for a couple of reasons. One, he knows he probably has one more shot at being a head coach, so he's not going to rush into it for that reason. And two, I do think Kliff is a pretty laid-back guy. Doesn't mean he can't be a leader, but I do think he's kind of laid back and kind of just likes designing offense and working with quarterbacks. So I think he likes the appeal of, I could just work with Jaden Daniels for a few years, let Dan Quinn run the team, and, if I feel ready to jump back in the ring, I can jump back into the ring. You listen to his answer like we talked about earlier, though, being a head coach again. I do think he would like to do it again, but I also don't think he's going to rush into anything. Like, I think he's going to see how this plays out. If it happens, if the right opportunity is there and that team wants him, great. If not, coaching Washington's offense is not that bad of a fallback option. And look, I say all this to say is I think I'm interested in Kliff again. As a candidate, not my top guy. Don't freak out, Harrison. Don't stop settling. I keep getting accused of settling. I'm not settling. Reports are coming in on candidates. I'm talking about them. That's my job. I think Kliff is at least intriguing. He's piquing my interest. It seems like he could be maturing. The results on the field would suggest as much. It's not just that they're winning because of Dan Quinn. They're scoring a lot of points, and Kliff is pushing the right buttons with Jaden Daniels, with that rushing attack. Watch the games. He's doing a good job. Now, we'll see how they finish. One game left in the playoffs. I would say getting this team to the playoffs, having Jaden be named to the Pro Bowl and winning Rookie of the Year, Kliff deserves a good amount of credit for that. I think if you flipped quarterbacks, Caleb Williams in Washington, Jaden Daniels in Chicago, maybe Jaden has a better year here than Caleb had here, but I feel very confident that Caleb would be having a better year in Washington than he's having in Chicago, because I do think Kliff has done a significantly better job than the combination of Shane Waldron and Thomas Brown. Now, was it fair for Thomas Brown? Not really, obviously not. So that's more of a Waldron Eberflus polls bringing those coaches in problem. But I mean, I think we can all agree with that. Would anybody debate that Jaden had a better rookie year? No, but flip quarterbacks on teams. I think Caleb would have had a better season in Washington than Jaden would have in Chicago. Again, would it have been to the same level that it's happened this year? There's no way to know that. But I do think Kliff, his play calling, the design of the offense, making the adjustments he's made throughout the season, he's done a really, really nice job. So don't get it confused. Ben Johnson's my top guy, but Kliff Kingsbury's back on my radar, and he was kind of off of it a month ago. So these things are fluid. Things can change. Sounds like he'll probably interview, and we'll see if anything comes from that. We'll have to wait and see. Are you guys interested in Kliff Kingsbury? Yes or no? Let me know in the comment section down below. Again, not running to the betting booths, betting on him to be the next head coach, but he's on my radar. He's on my radar. That's all I will say. All right, that's going to do it for Chicago Bears. Now, hit that subscribe button if you want more Bears content. We're going to have a Brian Flores episode next. Again, on Harrison, what about Ben Johnson? We're going to keep talking about Ben Johnson. That's not going anywhere. But when new information comes in, when candidates are mentioned, we're going to talk about those guys as well. A lot of Ryan Poles, Brian Flores connections out there. Also, Flores going up a bit against Ben Johnson. Might have a video on that this weekend as well. So keep us locked in. Subscribe to the channel. We love you. We appreciate you. See you guys soon. Bear down.